If I said Aaron Rodgers needs to play in a preseason game this year to get used to his teammates, is that ridiculous?
Yeah, that's totally ridiculous. Totally ridiculous. Look, they're going to have joint practices. They're going to have one this week against the Carolina Panthers. So I think those kinds of situations are ones that are just as valuable and more controlled, something where you can then kind of like mitigate the risk of injury in a much greater way for a guy like Aaron Rodgers. And that's what I believe is most important. Going out there and playing a series, playing 8 to 10 snaps, in a first preseason game or a second preseason game in the case of the Jets, makes no sense because the risk far outweighs the reward. So for him, you put him on ice until week 1. You get him as many reps as you can in a controlled environment. He'll get the timing down. They'll need to play regular games anyway in order to get the timing down. So it's not like the preseason is going to make or break it.
No, I'm with that completely. And then, Mike T., what is it that Aaron Rodgers could be doing right now that would improve his chances?
He would be walking into his assistant general manager, Joe Douglas, and say, hey, $35 million, I have now bought the general manager's position, and we are going to go sign Dalvin Cook today. So, Joe, if you want to help me, great, but I'm getting Dalvin Cook signed, and that's going to happen before I go back out to practice.
I love the idea of Dalvin Cook and
general manager.
His assistant general manager. Jeff Darlington, give me another one. Give me another player.
I'm not worried about Dalvin Cook. I'm saying go trade for David Bakhtiari. Let's go. Let's load up this offensive line. Let's see what we can do here. We've got some vulnerabilities here. We got some money to spend. Let's use a little draft capital. Let's bring in some guys that I know, maybe Bakhtiari, for instance, and get this thing moving.
I love it. Look, Aaron Rodgers did not give $35 million back to the Jets so they could spend it in 2028. The time to spend it is right now when they've got their chance. So I'll take Dalvin Cook, I'll take David Bakhtiari, and I'll take anything else you might want to throw in as well. Aaron Rodgers, get it done. I sat next to you at the draft and heard for 2 days just how good the Lions are going to be. What do you think?
Man, everybody's getting hot for the Lions, and I kind of like it. But that also scares me now because that's like the stock market. Once everybody gets in, it's time for you to get out. But you know what? I'm with Mike because week 1 is the wild card of all weekends in the NFL. Mike knows this. You just don't know how your team's going to be when a guy has to play in a full hour of football, 3 hours in real time, right? However long it takes a game to play. You don't know how the guys are going to react. It's usually hot. It's, guys come up with cramps. You don't know how the other team is going to, game plan for you because you have no resume on them for that particular season, at the start. It's just a total wild card. And not to discount at all the fact that the Lions are good. This is a good football team. Someone was asking me the other day, well, you know what, who's the best quarterback, in the NFC North? It's Jared Goff. That's who the best quarterback in the NFC North is. Statistically, you can't deny it. And this football team, I'm telling you, on the defensive side, Aaron Glenn is going to parlay a great season in 23 to a head coaching job in 24. They have got it going on in Detroit. I would not put it past them at all to go on Arrowhead and win that game opening weekend.
Yeah, they won 8 of their last 9 games a year ago, and that one loss you might remember was a heartbreaker on Thanksgiving against a very good Buffalo team on a field goal at the very end. Jeff Darlington, let's talk then about the other side of this, which is that potential weakness that the Chiefs could have when the season begins, and that is the holdout of Chris Jones. He's their best player on defense and maybe their second most important player overall. How's it sounding in KC?
Look, Greeny, I'll tell you, it sounds as optimistic as it has throughout the offseason. I guess the only qualm there is that I was saying in June that, look, everybody believes this is going to get done, and we're still now here in August, 30 days away from the season, and it's not done. I will tell you, though, that they recognize the value of Chris Jones. They recognize that this is going to be a massive number for a defensive lineman. Again, it looks like it's going to get done, Greeny, but until the ink is dry, you know the deal.
And I want to show you an interesting quote, because it's peripherally connected, of course, to Kansas City. And it comes from Juju Smith-Schuster. All right, so he's played previously for the Steelers and the Chiefs, and now he's in New England. So he's played really for the 3 preeminent coaches. I guess you would have to include Pete Carroll, but 3 legendary coaches of the era: Bill Belichick, Mike Tomlin, and Andy Reid. And here's what he said. He said, all 3 coaches speak the same language when it comes to championship mindset. They may say it in different ways, but it's all the same message. And you can feel that winning mindset throughout each organization. Lewis, you obviously or not obviously, but you did play for Bill Belichick once upon a time. And you look at those three sort of somewhat legendary coaches there, Juju playing for all of them, the juxtaposition of those three.
Yeah, it is. Messaging is very different between them all. And obviously their area of expertise in terms of how they came up is very different. Look, I'm partial to Bill because of the fact that this is a guy who I believe could coach any position on a football team. Like if any assistant coach got injured, fell ill, Bill could fill in. It wouldn't matter if it was secondary linebacker, defensive line, offensive line, wide receiver, tight end, running back, quarterback. It doesn't matter. Or the kicking game. And I've seen this guy really intimidate other coaches into trying to change up what they're doing because they're trying to figure out if he's going to change up what he's doing, and they just kind of wind up playing that mental gymnastic game, trying to get a step ahead of him, where quite honestly, he's just keeping it actually pretty simple in that case. So I think he's the guy who understands how to take away opponents' weaknesses, and take away opponents' strengths and turn them into weaknesses better than anybody in the history of the game. And he wound up really making me into the player that I became, whatever you want to think of that, and was brutally honest about it, and I respect him for it, and he'd be the guy I'd pick, although the other two I have tremendous respect for.
So if you're wondering why there are no words on the bottom of your screen, that's my fault. Artie Dolan, who's producing the show, asked the question to all these guys, if you had to pick one of those three coaches, go ahead and put it up there. And I said I didn't like the question, so he didn't want to do it because I said I didn't like it. If you had to pick one of those guys to coach your team in the Super Bowl, which one would you take? Tomlin, Belichick, or Reid? And I thought it was unfair to make you guys choose among them. But since we sat there with no words on the screen all that time. Blame me for that one, by the way, if you're at home. One of the executives here was going to yell at the producer a little later and say, why were there no words on the screen? It was Greeny's fault. So let's see, we got two Belichicks. Of course, Mike Tannenbaum voted for Belichick because he saunaed with him. But Jeff Darlington, you're going Andy Reid. Andy Reid on this one. How about that?
Look, I can already feel the wrath on Twitter right now. But here's the deal. I think in 2023, I go Andy Reid. And the obvious thing here is that who's your quarterback, right? He's got Patrick Mahomes. But removing that, an offensive-minded coach in 2023 with the willingness to be creative in big moments, Jet Chip Wasp in the Super Bowl, when he's empowering his players to come up with plays and coming back to him. I get it. It all only works if you have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback, just as it did just for Belichick when he had Tom Brady as his quarterback. I just think in 2023, I go with the offensive-minded coach. Don't hate.
Lewis is laughing. Go ahead.
Listen to you calling plays. Be quiet, darling. Jet Chip Wasp. You don't even know what you know. What do you know about Jet Chip Wasp? What do you know?
I watch documentaries,
what do you know about
man.
What do you know?
I don't know anything about it. I just know it worked.
Yeah, we all watched quarterback, and now we're all going to watch.
I love it.
We're all going to watch Hard Knocks starting tonight and everything else, and that's the extent.
And
let the record show. I still hate the question, but you got Brock Purdy, you got Trey Lance, whom they gave up the whole world to go get, and you got Sam Darnold, who they're trying to rehabilitate. Who should their quarterback be this year?
Look, I know this is going to sound like a cop-out, but it's actually not. I really do think this should be a wide-open competition because I've heard people speak glowingly about all three of these players. All three of them. Look, what Brock did at the end of last year, look, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan both said he deserves to be at the front of the line when the quarterback competition opens in 23. And he is at the front of the line. He will line up with the first team. It is his job to lose or his job to keep. But you just mentioned the fact that Trey Lance at one point in time was considered the guy who's going to take Kyle's offense to a whole nother level. A whole nother level, and you trade up in order to get him because you feel as though he has that kind of potential. Is something you just can't discount. I don't know how you can just say, well, you know what? Yeah, you can compete, but you can't compete for the starting job. He has to be given a fair chance to win that job. And when you talk about Sam Darnold, I've said this I believe it was on this show. Someone in the offseason told me this. This is the guy, and someone who I trust, this is a guy who now has found the perfect place for him. I believe he has the potential to be comeback player of the year type of good in this kind of system. So when you feel he didn't get that from just himself, somebody had to tell him that. Somebody had to believe in him. That's why I think this needs to be wide open. It just needs to be wide open.
Why is Jeff making that face?
Because he literally just said Brock Purdy is going to be the comeback player of the year, but Trey Lance deserves to
No.
Darnold is going to be comeback player of the year.
No, Jeff.
Darnold is going to be the comeback player of the year?
I said he could be, and I didn't say I said it, Jeff. I said someone told me that, Jeff. You need to listen better on this. Put on your ears. Put on your ears. That's what I said, Jeff. You're trying to manipulate my words.
Listen, Trey Lance and Sam Darnold have gotten every opportunity to be the starting quarterback. In fact, Brock Purdy, while he was in Jacksonville rehabilitating his elbow, gave them the opportunity. And guess what they did with it? They didn't earn it. Brock Purdy comes back in. He's clearly the top guy there. Even when he's taking rest days, the other two guys are competing for backup roles. Brock Purdy is the starting quarterback. It's not a competition, nor should it be.
Lewis has called a timeout. Lewis, go.
Hold on. When are you talking about they had a chance to win the job and they didn't win? Are you talking about during like walkthroughs during OTAs in the offseason? Is that what you're talking about?
Yesterday, when Brock Purdy had a day of rest, those two guys were splitting the first team reps. And they didn't do anything with it. They're getting their chance. They're not
they didn't win. They didn't win the job yesterday in the couple reps that they took in practice. That one practice, huh? They didn't win. He didn't win it?
Of all the transactions this year in the NFL, draft trades, whatever, by far the most intriguing was Sam Darnold. And here's why, guys. He signed on the first day of free agency. If you're going to be the third string quarterback, you usually do that in June or July. The fact that he signed it on the first day of free agency, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch said something to Sam Darnold to say, I'm coming there. And I think when it's all said and done, comeback player of the year or whatever, I think Sam Darnold plays real good football for the 49ers. And maybe it's in the preseason. Maybe they force Brock Purdy's hand to be ready to go on opening day. But there is something really intriguing about Sam Darnold signing as early as he did with the 49ers.
Lewis, you know what's incredible to think about? Yeah. Let me just say this one quick thing here.
That was my point.
Yeah, the 49ers, we're talking about three guys, okay? Two of them were the third pick in their respective drafts, Sam Darnold and Trey Lance. And the guy they're trying to beat out was the last pick in the entire draft the year he came out. And that's the presumptive starter in San Francisco. I guess it just goes to show you what an imperfect science all of this is. But so Darlington, let me come back to you quickly on this. When all is said and done, you believe that Purdy is the starter and it will remain that way. And that's assuming he stays healthy, that's it.
Greeny, in all seriousness, just going back to the end of last season, internally, Kyle Shanahan believed that Brock Purdy had already done enough to be his starting quarterback in 2023. That was before the injury. So all this offseason, in the back of Kyle's head, he has believed that when Purdy was healthy, he would resume his role as the starter. Again, taking the opinions and the fun out of this between me and Lou, I'm just telling you, internally in San Francisco, that is the clear belief.
Talking about a player of Martin's stature and significance, when asked if he was surprised that they haven't gotten anywhere, he said, not really. Surprised is really not the word there. It's very costly. That's just where we are. There are huge, significant ramifications happening here by anybody's measure financially. So you realize that not having him here, it could happen via injury on the next play. You got to put that one on and say you just move on here without him. You say that sounds like a concern. No, I'm just trying to give you how you really have to look at it. I mean, Louis Riddick, the phrase in football that he's sort of bringing up there is next man up. But you don't have to be next man up if they get a deal done. So that sounds like Jerry is saying, I wouldn't promise anybody Zack Martin is going to be here. What are you hearing in that?
Yeah, I see the same thing. Look, I think Jerry understands, and we talked about this in the last hour, but Jerry understands the importance of Zack Martin to the overall team-building structure, especially his team in particular. Especially when you're talking about, and additionally, when you're talking about philosophically, they want to be a football team that captures the line of scrimmage, likes to run the football for 4+ yards per carry, likes to establish that kind of identity and have everything built off of that. And without Zack Martin, he understands that you can't really get that done because this is a guy who really dominates the interior of the offense. And he's the guy who sets the tone. And remember, Zack Martin was an offensive tackle in college who moved to guard. So he is unbelievably talented, But, as Mike alluded to, and I'm sure he'll expand upon, you don't want to set precedent when guys have multiple years left in their contract and everyone can just come walking into Jerry's office and go, hey, look, I feel as though I've been surpassed by other people who I think I'm better than. You can't do that. And then lastly, you have other guys coming down the pike that he's going to have to pay a lot of money that may play even more important positions. So these are the tough decisions you have to make as a general manager.
Well, Mike, talk me through how those conversations go, and you had famously, these negotiations with Darrelle Revis, and now a Hall of Famer when he was holding out and things like that. Zack Martin says, I'm not getting paid enough. You're saying, when I paid you, you wanted a long-term deal, and I made you the highest paid guy in the whole league. It's not my fault that it has all moved this way. Talk me through how that conversation goes, and maybe most importantly, how does it get resolved?
Yeah, it's similar to what Lewis said, Greeny, which is this. You have to have both sides declare victory. And what I would do is, if I'm Jerry Jones, I say, look, Zach, I will give you an extension, but this is it for the rest of your career. We're going to go 7 years like we did with Tyron Smith, and we know that Chris Lindstrom's at $20 million a year, and we'll get you there, but that is going to be it. We are not tearing up contracts and just giving out more money, because your audience, Greeny, as a GM is 52 other Dallas Cowboys are watching really closely how you handle it. Because if I'm Micah Parsons, I'm going to sign a 7-year deal, and then 2 years later, I'm going to want that ripped up. So if I'm Jerry Jones, I need to declare victory by doing an extension. If I'm Zack Martin, I want to get to the top of the market. So you really need to thread the needle here. But make no mistake about it, Zack Martin is hugely consequential to the success of this team. And if I'm Mike McCarthy, the head coach, I am climbing the walls until I see Zack Martin in training camp.
Yeah, he's an incredibly important player. And I see both sides of it, because, yes, I see the ownership saying, we gave you this deal and now you want to redo it. The other side of it is the player can say, if I underperformed, you would have gotten me out of here a long time ago already. So it does kind of work one way and not in the other. Jeff, where's the leverage here? How does this thing go?
I don't know. I don't get the leverage. Generally speaking, I find myself, and probably shouldn't as a journalist, pro player in these situations. I'm like, yeah, go get your money. But in this one, he signed the deal in 2018. And again, highest paid guard at the time and second highest paid offensive lineman. There was only one offensive tackle paid more than him. This is the risk reward of taking long-term deals. When Dak Prescott was going through his thing, he was fighting for the 4-year contract when the team wanted to give him the 5-year contract because he wanted to get to free agency faster again. You give up long-term security when you do that, but you also get another bite at the apple. So I get where Jerry Jones is coming from entirely here. It doesn't make sense that a player who got paid that contract, took that deal, and ultimately wants a new deal before it's up. I understand Jerry Jones.
Yeah, me too. I see both sides. I hope this stuff is as interesting to everybody at home as it is to me, just the dynamics of this. And most importantly, what you should take out of this conversation, if nothing else, this is probably the most important player on the Cowboys offense. They are a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. Exactly. The stakes on this thing could not possibly be higher. Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.